Everybody, I'm back. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's having a great day, having an awesome day. And if you're not getting any of them good vibes that are out there, I by all means grab some of mine if you want. I do have some somewhere along the line. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about feeding and soil saturation. That's right. Kind of big words. But everybody's been asking for updates, and everybody's been saying, hey, how are you doing? How are things holding up? So on and so forth. And people have been asking for, some updates and all the rest of that stuff. So some of the updates I can't tell you because they're rather personal. Other updates, well, let's just say that I'm on this side of the green. I'm in this realm of reality, if that's what you want to call this. But I'm still here. I'm still kicking, and I'm not going to stop. To answer everybody else's questions about the kids and everything else, yes, it's been a couple of weeks since I've seen the kids. So yeah, it's trying, but I've been making sure I've been packing everything up and making sure that everything is, in a decent, fashion. So, just one of those things, where life ends up giving you a challenge and you have to fight it. Either rise and assemble or run and hide. And I hope you guys know me well enough by now to know that I'm not just going to run and hide. So for those of you that are, if you know, you know. With me saying that, you know. So there's the updates for that. As for, water, soil saturation and feedings and stuff like that, what brought this on is that there were a few people that have ended up asking me about, different feeding styles for plants and stuff like that, whether bottom feeding would be best or if, this other, just watering in, flushing, so on and so forth. It's one of those things. And there was somebody who had ended up going and pointing out a reel that had ended up coming up about flushing your plants. And whether or not you should end up doing it or not. Everybody has their opinions. Okay? But there's, hey, Coot, how you doing, brother? But, when it ends up coming to flushing your plants or saturating your soil, you have to remember something. You're at the end of your grow. You're trying, what you're essentially doing is stripping all of those minerals out from the soil. So you're basically giving it like a chemotherapy. You're trying to cut it all out and everything else. Hanging in there as usual. Right on, brother. By the way, found a backup. Ended up getting myself a little help. I'll end up telling you in the DMs later, Coot. But anyway, when you end up stripping your soil of all those minerals and nutrients and everything else, you're literally giving your plant chemotherapy. You're stripping everything out of there. So do I suggest flushing? Not really. Cut back on your feedings. And what I mean by that is instead of saturating your soil, soaking it right up, just letting it go all the way through, turning your substrate into like a very, very loose mud. Don't do that. Even if you're trying to flush your plants or whatever, don't. Because you're actually going to end up doing more harm to your plants than good. What you should do instead of flushing is cutting back the amount you're feeding at every watering. The reason why for that is because your soil is already built up with all those minerals and nutrients and all that good stuff for the roots, for the plants, and all the rest of it. When you start cutting it back, you're actually causing it to feed from the soil and use up what's left in it. So instead of, say, for example, at one feeding you're supposed to give, like if you're an organic grower, you're not adding too many inputs at this point. But if you're a chemical grower or a synthetic grower, whatever, nutrient grower, you start cutting it back slowly. So instead of it being, like 5 mils, you go 4.5, 4, 3.5, 3, 2.5, 2, and you just keep cutting down until you're at nothing and pure water. Now, like I said, the reason why you do this is because your soil is so full of nutrients and everything else. You don't need to add anything extra in that, last week and a half, whatever you want to say, or 2 weeks of your 8-week flower session or your 16-week flower grow. So you want to try to keep it back. You're putting it on a bit of a diet to help it bulk up. And you want it to have a nice dry back. So what that means, if you're just new to this, a dry back is where you let it dry right out to the point. What I normally do is I go 1 finger deep. I don't just go, knuckle deep. I go finger deep. And if I can go all the way down in that soil with a finger and bring it back up and it's still dry as a bone, that's a proper dry back in my opinion. So what you should end up in turn doing is not flood, but cut back on the amount of food, plant food you're giving if you're a synthetic grower, and use the same amount of water that you've been using the whole time along. Just if it's a gallon of water or 4.2 liters, you end up taking that, pour that in there, let it soak that up, go back, take a look at the drain. Okay, cool. There's no drain. It soaked it back up. You've ended up checking your pH. Life is good. That is why you don't end up, doing a flush. It's because of the dry back. And also because you are giving your plants chemotherapy at that point if you're just going straight water. Unless you are a no-till, 100% organic grower. There are other things that you can do as an organic grower to beef up your plants and everything else, but that's covered, in other lives later on down the road. But that's what I would suggest. Just cut back on the amount you're feeding. You'll start noticing that your plants will start producing a lot more trikes and everything else that are out there on our favorite tomato plants, if you know what I mean. Same thing happens when you decide to add humic acid. Humic acid, again, you can still add that while you're going through your whole flowering session, while you're, while it's stretching, while you're letting it do its thing. So keep that in mind because that helps with nutrient uptake as well. Like I keep saying, peat moss is what you would end up adding. Boil it down if you wanted, whatever, I don't care. But throw peat moss into your soil as well because it's a great source of it. Now, yes, when you are, flushing your plants or when you are just saturating your soil, your pH will fluctuate like mad. Remember, just use dolomite lime on top of your plants. Just a little bit of water, a little bit of food. Cut it back as you go throughout the week and or weeks if you wanted to take it along like that far along. But that's what I would suggest you do. So, that's why I don't suggest saturating your soil, flushing your plants, but what to do when you're near the end. As always, hope you take care of each other and peace.